What if true enlightenment isn't about discovering a distant light, but about courageously walking through the very center of your own inner darkness? Carl Jung once suggested that consciousness does not emerge without a struggle. Before you can genuinely know yourself and comprehend your true nature, everything you believed yourself to be must start to unravel. This message isn't designed to offer simple comfort. It's not meant to pacify your thoughts or reinforce your ego. Instead, it is an invitation to sit with your shadow, to confront the aspects of yourself you have long avoided, and to remain present even when the inner quiet feels overwhelming. It is only within that profound stillness of the soul that what is authentic can begin to surface. A spiritual awakening does not always commence with a feeling of peace or clarity. It is not a straightforward pursuit of light or a higher state. More frequently, it starts as a silent plea from deep within you. It is a persistent, unnameable calling that originates not from the mind, but from a more ancient, sacred part of your being. And it does not arrive gently. It comes like an earthquake, destabilizing the foundations of your identity. It dismantles everything that feels familiar and secure. Most individuals do not successfully navigate this initial phase. This isn't because the body cannot endure it, but because the self they have spent their entire life constructing begins to dissolve. The identity, the personal stories, the roles, and the masks all start to fall away. What is left behind is something far more raw and untamable: the truth. When this truth emerges, many people retreat. They resort to numbing behaviors, return to their comfortable illusions, and effectively go back to sleep. This is because authentic truth does not cradle you. It challenges you. It shatters your illusions, removes the facade of safety, and strips away the borrowed beliefs and second-hand dreams you once held as your own. This is the part of the journey that is rarely discussed. It is the detail often omitted from polished narratives about enlightenment. It is the scream beneath the silence, a profound internal ending of a former self. It's the soul's tremor upon realizing that the world it once knew no longer holds the same meaning. You were told that awakening was about finding light, but that is only one half of the experience. The other half is born in the shadows. Once you cross that hidden threshold, the world doesn't literally end, but it begins to dissolve on an existential level. The meanings you once assigned to life begin to crumble. The version of yourself you held onto starts to fade. Your idols, your ambitions, your core beliefs, everything that once supported you, become hollow echoes in a space you no longer recognize. This is what Carl Jung alluded to when he spoke of awakening involving pain. It is because awakening doesn't arrive in a state of peace. It comes shrouded in crisis. It begins when the life you have carefully constructed starts to feel like a falsehood. It wasn't a malicious lie, but a necessary one, a framework that once shielded you from truths you were not yet prepared to confront. But now, a deeper part of you is ready. An ancient, untamed, and sacred part of you refuses to remain dormant any longer. You can no longer ignore what you have come to see. The dreams you once pursued now feel as if they belong to someone else. The people who once felt like home now seem distant. as if you are operating on a completely different frequency. Even the pleasures that once excited you now feel empty and tasteless. What is left is a profound silence. A silence so deep it seems to drown out the voice you once identified as me. This is the dissolution of the ego. It is not a mere metaphor. It is a real and challenging psychological restructuring of your identity. If you resist, the internal friction grows stronger. If you fight it, the experience can feel like intense inner turmoil. Even if you surrender, the process will still take you apart. But within that deconstruction, there is a glimpse of something eternal. This is why so many people turn back. The old self does not fade away quietly. It protests, it bargains, and it pleads to remain. It might tell you that you are just experiencing depression, that you are broken, or that you are lost. And for a time, perhaps you are, because the life map you were given was never intended to lead you back to your true self. You were taught to conform, to achieve, and to follow a predetermined path, but no one taught you how to be authentic. No one showed you how to journey inward. No one prepared you to listen to the quiet whisper beneath the social mask. So yes, this descent can feel like destruction, but in reality, it is a sacred process. It is an invitation, an initiation into your own rebirth. You will be asked to let go of everything that is not truly you. Every label, every role, and every identity you wore but never genuinely owned. You will lose things. You will lose people. You will lose versions of yourself that once seemed permanent. And you must release them, because attempting to carry them into this new way of being will only hinder your progress. Awakening doesn't provide you with an improved version of your old life. It reduces that life to ashes. And in the smoke, it waits to see if something authentic dares to rise from the remains. Most people choose to turn back. They select comfort over truth, external approval over authenticity, and the security of a familiar cage over the vast, wild unknown. Because the wild is intimidating. It communicates in a language that the rational mind cannot comprehend. It asks you to feel, to stay present, and to hold your own gaze when the mirror reflects the parts of yourself you have tried to forget. It reveals your shadow, not as a monster, but as an integral part of you, a part you may have abandoned, a part that has been quietly waiting to be reintegrated. And now it calls to you. There are internal encounters that defy verbal explanation. They are driven by a sacred urgency, the soul's deep need to see itself without a mask. This includes the part of you that felt unheard, that learned to manipulate, to fear, and to control, simply to get by in an environment lacking unconditional love. And yet, it is within that very part that your rebirth begins. Now, it desires to be seen and acknowledged. Awakening does not mean running from the shadow. It means inviting it in, allowing it to sit with you, and looking it in the eyes, even when its presence brings discomfort, silence, or chaos. The shadow doesn't whisper. It communicates through inner pain, self-sabotaging behaviors, and the impulses that challenge what you hold dear. It can hide in your jealousy, your behavioral issues, or your constant need to be defensive. As long as you look away and pretend it isn't there, you remain stuck, repeating the same patterns, relationships, and fears. What most people fail to grasp is this: awakening isn't the cessation of suffering. It is the conscious beginning of facing it. It means truly confronting it with honesty, with open eyes, and with your soul laid bare. That is why so few ever cross this threshold. Because awakening doesn't ask for a small part of you. It asks for everything. It demands your grief, your anger, your silence, and your willingness to be reborn with no guarantees about who you will become. It asks you to release your old self completely while you are still living, to watch the framework of your identity collapse and to still say yes. And in that yes, a new chapter begins. This descent does not require your strength. It asks for your surrender. That is what terrifies the ego the most, because the ego was built to control, to manage how you feel, what others perceive, and the story you tell yourself. It was forged in a world that often discourages vulnerability. But your soul did not come here merely to survive. It came to transform. Real transformation always starts with a breaking down. You must shed the armor, unravel the old narratives, and dismantle the structures that once defined who you had to be. Only then can something real emerge, not something born of fear, but something rooted in your true essence. And that essence doesn't shout or make demands. It waits patiently and silently for the noise to subside, for the masks to fall, and for the mind to tire of its endless churning. Then, and only then, it whispers. Not in words, but as a deep, unmistakable yearning for something more. Not more success or validation, but something more real, more honest, and more alive. Do not mistake this longing for weakness or label it as a dysfunction. It is the call, a sacred signal that you are ready to leave the old pretenses behind. But here lies the challenging truth. Most people hear that call and choose to ignore it. They bury it under achievements, drown it in distractions, and numb it with routine. Because answering that call means letting go of the world they have built, a world constructed on unstable ground. And no one warns you how isolating that first step can be. The first stage of awakening isn't always beautiful. It's often a period of exile. It is an exile from the familiar, from your socially accepted self, and from the system of external validation you never realized you relied upon. And in that exile, you will feel a pull to return. You will miss the numbness, the predictability, and the comfort of pretending, but something inside you will not let you go back. Once you have glimpsed the truth, you cannot completely unsee it. Once you have felt the weight of your soul, you can no longer be content with floating on the surface. So you begin to wander through restless nights and mornings marked by tears you cannot explain. You navigate relationships that suddenly feel hollow, even if nothing has outwardly changed. You are not broken. You are in the space in between. You are in the cocoon, the void, the liminal zone where the old has faded and the new has not yet taken root. It is a daunting yet sacred place. And it is there, in the stillness and the silence, that your soul begins its most profound work. The shadow draws closer now, no longer tolerating being ignored. It appears in every reaction, every old wound rising from deep within, like a buried cry, echoing through time. And only when you meet it without judgment, with compassion and surrender, does real transformation begin. A transformation born not from perfection, but from authenticity. Not through control, but by embracing the truth. And yes, you will want to run. Of course you will. You were taught to avoid pain, to cover it up, to sweeten it with affirmations, and to disguise it with false positivity. But awakening is not an escape. It is a confrontation. It involves looking directly into the mirror of your own fragmentation and refusing to turn away. You are not being asked to bypass discomfort. You are being asked to feel it, to sit with it, to allow it to move through you, and to let it teach you what comfort never could. Then, gradually, something begins to shift. You start to see that pain was never the enemy. It was the doorway, the crack in your armor through which light could finally enter. You begin to understand that anger, sadness, and fear were never broken parts of you. They were messengers, each carrying a piece of your truth. And as you truly listen, something softens within you. Something ancient awakens. You begin to feel something you may not have felt in years, or perhaps ever. Compassion. Not just for others, but for yourself, for the child you once were, who may not have received the support they needed, for the teenager who built emotional armor just to get by, for the adult who mistook being busy for having a purpose. Now you see it all without judgment, but with tenderness, awe, and a grace that can only rise from the ashes of self-abandonment. And in that grace, everything starts to change. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth. You no longer chase an ideal of perfection. You no longer believe you must be completely healed to be worthy, because at last you are remembering who you are beneath it all. And that memory changes everything. You come to see that awakening was never about becoming a better version of yourself. It was always about returning to what is honest. Being honest with the chaos, with the beauty, and with the paradox of being human, divine and afraid, eternal and fractured, limitless and wounded. And somehow, that honesty becomes your solid ground. It is not made of safety or certainty, but of truth. From that truth, you no longer need to convince anyone of who you are. You no longer feel the need to fit in. You no longer have to enter spaces that dim your inner light. You no longer need to silence your truth just to feel accepted, because now you know that you are your own safe place. Not because you have figured everything out, but because you have stopped abandoning yourself, especially in the moments when it matters most. You have stopped running, and that changes everything. Very few people ever reach this point, not because they are weak, but because no one ever taught them how to stay with discomfort, to stay with the unknown, and to stay with their own soul long enough to truly hear its voice. But you are staying, and because of that, you are becoming real, not polished or perfect, but grounded, aligned, and deeply alive. And this is the beginning of the unbreakable you. You start to see just how much of your life was constructed upon borrowed dreams, dreams you never consciously chose, dreams handed to you by culture, by fear, and by generations who understood survival more than wholeness. And survival teaches you to shrink, to wear a mask, to trade your soul for approval, and to bury your needs, your truth, and your hunger behind a smile that never quite reached your eyes. But you are not just surviving anymore. You are awakening. And with that awakening comes a sacred frustration, a powerful rejection of every lie you once lived, against the roles you played and the ways you betrayed yourself just to be accepted. That powerful feeling is not a step backward. It is a resurrection. It is a remembering that you were never meant to live asleep. You begin to speak differently, not necessarily louder, but with more clarity. You say no without feeling guilty. You say yes without needing external permission. You stop apologizing for being your whole self, and the world may not know what to make of this version of you. It was accustomed to a you that would fit in, comply, and be diluted into something more palatable. But now, you are a frequency it cannot easily categorize, a truth it cannot distort, and a presence that can inspire others just by being. This is the power of embodiment. It's not about talking about healing or posting about awakening, but living it, breathing it, and letting it move through every moment without resistance. And no, it is not always beautiful. Sometimes it looks like crying alone in your car as your nervous system rewires itself. Sometimes it means losing people you thought would be in your life forever because your truth became too resonant for their silence. Sometimes it means saying goodbye to a life that, while built with love, was constructed from a version of yourself that you no longer are. This is the cost of becoming. You don't just lose illusions, you lose identities. You lose the structures that once held you. Even now you rise, even when the path ahead is unclear. Even when what supported you before no longer fits. In its place, there isn't a new identity waiting, but a void, a sacred space, a pause between what was and what will be. You might wake up and not quite know who you are. You move through the world feeling both ancient and newborn. You try to name it or explain it, but words feel inadequate. You try to make plans, but the future remains silent because this space is not for building. It is for listening. Listening to that quiet whisper beneath all the noise, the one that gently says, let go. Let go of the plan, the timeline, the need to understand everything. This is the space that shapes you. It strips you bare, showing you what is left when there is nothing left to defend, and what is left is real. Not the role you played or the polished image you wore like armor. What remains is your breath, your presence, and the deep, unshakable pulse of simply being alive with nothing to prove. In that stillness, you don't meet the self you hope to become. You meet the one who has always been there, the wild one, the wounded one, the one who remembers why you came here before the world taught you to forget. You stop chasing a purpose and start living it in each word, each step, and every choice that favors softness when the world demands hardness. You stop searching for meaning as if it were a destination to be reached. You begin living it in how you walk, how you love, and in your refusal to abandon your soul when life becomes challenging. This is the deepest part of awakening, not because it is hidden, but because it cannot be taught. It can only be lived. It is not a destination or a single breakthrough moment. It is a rhythm, a return, and a remembering of the self behind the shadow, the self before the roles, the self beyond the story. And when you begin to live from that place, not just visit it, but truly inhabit it, everything changes, not suddenly or loudly, but undeniably. Life grows quieter and more full. You stop explaining yourself to those who were never truly listening. You stop outsourcing your inner knowing to external systems or people. You stop betraying your truth just to fit in. And then something unexpected happens. You stop chasing love because you finally understand that you are love. You always were. It isn't waiting in a reflection, in someone else's eyes, or in a future moment. It is here, now, within you. And you begin to trust that a life aligned with truth unfolds in its own time. What falls away was never truly yours. What stays will meet you on this new frequency. You no longer rush the process. You no longer beg for clarity. You no longer fear the unknown because you are at home within yourself. The unknown now feels like a place of possibility, not because it has become familiar, but because within its mystery you have found a different kind of strength. It is a strength that rises not from victory, but from collapse, from breaking down and still finding your way through. This strength does not shout or seek applause. It does not shine by the world's standards of worth. It is quiet. It is sovereign. It is the strength of someone who has remembered who they are without needing to be seen. Because when you let go of everything that wasn't real, what remains is unbreakable. Not because it cannot be broken, but because it already has been and returned with a deeper truth. You no longer walk through life looking for proof that you matter. You walk as the proof, not for others, but for your soul, for that private part of you that remembers how much it cost to reclaim your voice, to walk your own path, and to burn down the old lies just to feel authentic again. This kind of strength is not built overnight. It is forged in fire, in the moments of facing the truth, and in those long nights when you were not sure you would make it. And now, survival is no longer the primary goal. Now, there is only truth. Your life feels simpler, not because it is easier, but because you have stopped wasting energy being someone you are not. You don't form bonds out of a fear of being alone. You don't trade your time for validation. You don't dilute your depth to be more accepted. You have come to know yourself too well to pretend again. What once felt like a curse, the exile, the disappointment, the silence, now feels like grace because it led you here, to this stillness, to this truth, to an inner sanctuary that no one outside of you can give or take away. Now, you may watch others run after possessions or chase meaning like shadows, and you don't judge them because you remember being there too. You still carry the scars, but now you carry the light as well. Not a blinding light, but a quiet, steady one. It is a light that calls out, that whispers, you can stop running now. You can feel again. You can return to yourself. Some will see that light in you. They will recognize what they have been longing to remember in themselves. Others will not. And that is okay, because you no longer feel the need to awaken anyone else. You only need to stay awake, stay rooted, stay open, and stay real. This is the silent revolution. It is not about fighting the system, but about ceasing to feed it with your inauthenticity. Not about preaching about change, but about embodying what can no longer be denied. Your presence becomes a mirror, not one that flatters, but one that reveals. Some may feel challenged in front of it. Others may awaken. But their reaction is not yours to manage. Your only task is to remain the mirror, to remain the clarity, to remain the fire. Spiritual awakening doesn't become power through performance. It becomes power through presence. You become something unshakable because you no longer live from the surface. You live from the source, from the self that was never lost, only asleep, pushed into the shadows of your soul by fear, habit, and past pain. And now you remember. You remember how to rest without guilt, how to feel without carrying someone else's burden, and how to speak without shrinking or asking for permission to exist. You remember how to walk through this world without needing to explain yourself, because your existence is no longer a question. It is the answer. You no longer ask, "Who am I supposed to be?" Now, with quiet certainty, you say, "I already am." That is the final threshold. This journey has never been about becoming more. It has been about becoming entirely, wholly, and unapologetically you. The sacred in the messy, the divine spark in the fragmented pieces, the healed scars and the wounds still healing, it is all part of you. And now, finally, everything is allowed. Nothing is exiled. Nothing is denied. You no longer try to escape your humanness. You are not running from your experience. You are inhabiting it fully, with eyes wide open, heart bare, spirit vulnerable, and soul brave. You survived the awakening not because you mastered it or transcended into some untouchable state. You survived because you stayed. You did not rise above the fire. You let it burn through you again and again. You stood your ground as the awakening process broke you down, emptied you, and stripped away your illusions, identities, and masks. And in the ashes of who you thought you were, something real was born. You did not become a better version of yourself. You became an authentic one. And that is the deeper transformation. Now you carry something with you, something beyond words, a frequency, an ancient knowing, a quiet light that does not shine to be seen. It just is. This is not a performance. It is presence, pure, grounded presence. And now, you walk the world without seeking the next peak moment, the next cosmic sign, or the next stage of growth, because you live from a space of having already awakened. Very few reach this space, not because they are incapable, but because they turn back too soon. They get close, feel the intensity, and retreat. But you did not. You stayed. You turned inward. You walked into your own depths. You faced the shadows, the old memories, and the silence. And in that stillness, you found something unexpected. You found a home inside yourself. Now, you do not move through life chasing anything. You move to radiate. You do not act to prove, you act because it is your nature. You are simply being, and in your presence others feel something different, not because of what you say or do, but simply because you stayed. You touched the fire. And against all odds, you chose to remain. And that sacred choice changes everything. If this message resonates with a deeper part of you, don't let this moment simply pass. I invite you to join this community by subscribing and turning on notifications to continue exploring this work. We are not here for superficial adjustments. We are here for genuine transformation. This space is for those who are ready to shed their conditioned self and step fully into their own awakening. So, if you are still here feeling that inner call, do not just be a spectator. Commit to your journey. We are just getting started.